was standing on top of the tallest freestanding mountain in the world when I had a moment that would change my life. It would actually create kind of a dotted line from that summit to this conversation. Now, I think to better understand what happened on that mountain, I got to back up about 10 years. I'm working at a university, and a student comes into my office, and this student really excited because he just heard a speaker, and this speaker was talking about the work that he was doing in this impoverished community in South America, a community and frankly a country that this student had never heard of, but the stories that this particular communicator had of both the despair but also the hope that he had, the plan that he had to help alleviate and elevate the community out of poverty was really moving. And really everybody that was listening to the speaker was moved. But there was 3 students that wanted to go past just feeling deeply about this community. They wanted to help this community that they had never met. And so this student comes in and he's like, I got this great idea. We're gonna bike across the country. We're gonna bike across the country and we're gonna raise money and awareness for this community that we have never heard of, but we feel so moved by. And so I tried to show a little bit of curiosity and asked the student a few questions. And I was like, hey, okay, sounds like a good plan. Do you have a route mapped out? Do you know how long biking across the country is? And he's like, well, no, not yet. And I said, okay, do you know on a daily basis, how many miles you're gonna have to ride? 25, 50, 100, and how long that takes? And he said, no. I'm like, okay, well, there are 3 of you. I'm like, do any of you have experience fundraising? How are you gonna turn riding a bike into raising money? How does that happen? Do you have any experience? And he said, no. I'm like, okay, how about any of the 3 of you cyclists? And he said, no. And I'm like, do you own a bike? And he said, no. And then he turned the table on me and he said, do you want to go? And I said, no. And it's not because it didn't sound like an epic idea, because it really did sound awesome, except it went against so many normal conventions and conventional thinking. And I was sitting there going, yeah, that sounds cool, but here's the deal. You don't really have that great of a plan. And so there's a high risk of failure, and I also don't own a bike. So I'm gonna go ahead and take a hard pass on that. And yet 3 months later, these 3 fellas got back and they had a trip of a lifetime. They went from Portland all the way to New York City and they raised $18,000, which at that time for those college students could have been $1 million. And they had their epic life story. And I was left feeling like, why didn't I have what it took to take that opportunity to make that decision? And I was feeling actually quite a bit of regret, and I thought it would pass, but the reality was it didn't. The regret kind of devolved into shame. I was like, am I ever gonna be the kind of person that can make the kind of choice to live the kind of life that's a great story that people would ever wanna listen to? Now, regret in the dictionary is something like the emotion or the feeling that we have when something happens, or specifically when something doesn't happen. And this is definitely the regret. I was feeling regret of a missed opportunity. There's a lot of people that do what I would just call traditional failure. Traditional failure is when you at least take the swing, right? You tried it, you've read books or you've listened to the Michael Jordans, the Steve Jobs, the Serena Williams, all the people that are successful, that are crushing it, that does the talk, that do the book, that do the podcast. These are the people that swing and they eventually get it. I'm the guy that sometimes doesn't take the swing. Didn't ask the girl out, didn't take the job, didn't move across the country to the exotic location or start the habit. I'm the guy that was wondering, hey, do I have what it takes to even make a decision like that? And so over time, this regret that didn't go away turned into shame, and I just kept thinking about it. I'm talking years. And there is a psychology term called preservation. Preservation, there you go. Probably because you've never heard it. Preservation is this idea that you have an intrusive or an uninvited thought that kind of creates this wormhole and keeps, some of you are really smart, others of you are like me. I just picture a hamster on a wheel, and it was just doing this in my head, and it was doing damage. I was like, I can't keep moving forward like this. Something's got to change. And so instead of trying to avoid those feelings, I started looking right at them. And then in looking at it, instead of just going, what am I feeling? I started asking a question, why am I failing? I made a marker and said, why was that so important to me? And when I started asking why, I realized that, oh, that opportunity, that was important to me. It was worth the risk. The ROI, even if I would have failed, would have been worth it because apparently I want to live a little bit more adventurous, a little bit less conventional. Apparently, I also want to be moved by needs that I see and respond, to not just feel deeply, to not just click like on Facebook, but to do something for other people. Those all became important things, and I started paying attention, and on some levels, I started trying to practice just stepping in and saying yes where I could, learning from this past thing. Which then brings me back to the mountain. So it's about 10 years later, and I get a call. I get a call from that student that came into my office that ended up biking across the country that you just saw in spandex, which may or may not be PG-13. And he called me and he said, hey, Paul, do you want to lead a trip? And I said, yes. I didn't even know where, but mama didn't raise no fool. You know, I said no one time, I'm going to say yes. And the invitation was to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. My wife and I got an opportunity to climb this mountain and lead a team of 10 people, and we were going to raise money and awareness for an impoverished community, one country over. Specifically, we were going to be raising money so that young girls who were living in a medical dump could have access to education to be who they were always created to be, thriving young leaders in their community. And this trip, epic. It's 19,000, just a little bit over 300 feet up in the air, and it takes about 7 days. 4 days up, 3 days down. We had this great idea. On the fourth day, the day that we were going to ascend to the peak, we're like, if we hike through the night, we could make it to Africa's rooftop as the sun comes up. Here comes the sun, do-do-do-do, right? So great plan, great idea, except I woke up and I was sick as I've ever been. There's something called mountain altitude sickness or acute mountain sickness. You all know because of all the mountains around here. So I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but basically when you gain elevation pretty quickly, there's less oxygen in the air, and that affects a whole bunch of things: dizziness, nausea, headaches, things happening in your body that we don't talk about around the dinner table. All of that happening inside of me, and I have to hike all the way through the night. Sick as I've ever been, hiking through the night, hiking so slow that we missed the sunrise by hours. But eventually I get to the top, we're ready to take the picture, and I'm telling you what, when they were sitting there with that camera, and I felt a little bit like that priest who was like, take the expletive picture. I thought I was gonna have a great moment, and I thought I was gonna be able to share a whole bunch of great stories and inspirational things, and I just wanted to get off the mountain. The good part about mountain altitude sickness is as you are descending the mountain, you get a little bit more oxygen to your blood, a little more blood to your brain, and I could start to kind of think a little bit more clearly. And as one does, as I was thinking more clearly, I was thinking about Hebrew poetry. And I was thinking about the great Hebrew poet Isaiah. And here's what he says. He says, if you are generous with those in needs, and if you give yourself to the down and out, then light will shine in the darkness, and your dark night will become like the noonday, and you will be shown where to go, and you will thrive, and of all things, you will have a strong frame. And who doesn't want to have a strong frame, right? So I was like, there was something that was happening inside of me that resonated. I was like, man, I was as tired and spent as I have ever been, and yet it was on behalf of some other people. These young sisters that I have never met. And there was something beautiful about giving myself more fully on behalf of helping somebody else. And my wife and I, we started talking about this, and we started talking about this idea of paying attention, just like we paid attention when I didn't go on the bike ride. We're like, hey, let's talk about this. And we started talking about how we wanted our kids to understand the world, not just from a point of opulence and comfort, but through the eyes of the poor and the oppressed and the marginalized around the globe, so that they could better understand what it meant to be a fellow human in a very complicated global system. And so as we continued to talk about both the trip and then this verse and what we felt like was happening in our lives, we decided that we were going to make another unconventional decision. And so we quit our job and we sold our house and we moved across the country, and we were going to join this movement of people called Venture. That was this group of people that had been biking, hiking, and running, raising money for people in need. We're like, yeah, those are our people. We're going to continue to step towards who we were created to be. And when we showed up in Minneapolis, Minnesota, not only did we have a vocation that was changed, but we showed up in the city, and this whole thing that was going on inside of us affected what part of the neighborhood we would live in, and it affected what it looked like for us to be neighbor. And it even informed us of this pursuit, and we considered and pursued foster care and adoption. This idea of moving from comfortable to less comfortable on behalf of other people began to shape us and shape the ideology and the story, not just of Paul, but who the Hurckmans are. As we chose to not just look at this regret, but reframing the regret and not letting it be about shame, but shaping who we become, we started having a much clearer picture of who we wanted to be. On top of all that, we got to work with an organization that over the last 10 years, we've been able to provide rescue to more than 3,000 girls who have been trafficked as we serve in some of the most difficult places on the planet. We've been able to invest in women's programs, more than 40,000 women in feminine hygiene and women's health and entrepreneurship. We've provided more than 75 million meals to refugees and displaced people who live an ocean away from us, many of whom we've never met. And our partners have planted more than 15,000 churches, these small little house churches that are meeting in huts and in fields and in caves that often become the center of transformation as they see needs in their community and are doing the same thing that we're trying to do. How do I help? How do I provide clean water? How do I rescue girls? How do I provide stable education and opportunity for other people? And as we've continued to try to step into opportunities, as we've reframed that regret, as we've moved from shame to a more of a shaping mentality, we continue to step into unconventional opportunities. Like this last January, when I was provided an opportunity to go on a little bit of a race. I know there's a runner in here. We're gonna attempt to run 7 marathons on 7 continents in 1 week's time. That's right, we're gonna start in Antarctica, because who wouldn't want to do that? And then we're gonna get in a plane and we're gonna go to Australia, and South Africa, don't wanna miss that. South Africa, do a marathon, get in a plane, go to Australia, do a marathon, get in a plane, go to Asia, do a marathon, get in a plane, go to Europe, get in a plane, go to South America, do a marathon, and end up in Miami. But it's not just for an epic story or a great adventure. The goal is going to be to try to inspire a movement of students and adults to raise more than $1 million to fight human trafficking. Because the invitation of that Hebrew poet and what I'm learning about how we are made is that not only are we interconnected, but the regret that we had in the past may just be the key to unlocking how we were created and the opportunities that may move forward. No, don't worry. Okay, the conversation's not about you should run a marathon or you should bike across the country, and Lord knows many of you shouldn't be in spandex to begin with. It's not about raising money or rescuing girls or even starting a nonprofit. The conversation or the invitation is for each of us to look back so we're better prepared to look forward, to look back to maybe that place where you felt regret. And regret didn't just stay there, but maybe it devolved into a level of shame. And maybe you've been trying to suppress it or keep it away, but maybe the invitation is to look at it and to go, what can I learn from this point in time? How can I reconcile and reframe this regret so that I'm better prepared moving forward? Because when we reframe regret, we pay attention to the feelings, but we also pay attention to what we can learn from the feelings. And we have the opportunity then moving forward to be better prepared, because there will be another opportunity, another chance to ask the girl or the guy out, another chance to get the new job, to start the business, to get on the ground floor of something, to write the book, to start the podcast, to go on the adventure. And in the meantime, while you're waiting for that opportunity, maybe you can be a little bit nicer to yourself. maybe instead of feeling shame, we can turn that to feeling a little bit more hope. Because the hope is this promise that there will be continued opportunity for you. There will be moments moving ahead where you can learn from what happened before and use that to step in to who you want to become. Whether you are 16 or 66 or 106, we all have the opportunity to reframe our regret, to head to that place, that promise, that opportunity that your open door will come. And in that moment, you get to step into who you are. You get to take the swing. You get to say yes.